Well, we couldn't let you leave without talking about baseball because that's what we always wrap up with. We're going to go ahead and talk about the NL Central, and we got to start off with the Chicago Cubs. They swept the Minnesota Twins, and they scored 35 runs in 3 games. That's pretty much an average of over 10 runs a game, close to 11 or 12. The Cubs, coming off getting swept by the Cincinnati Reds, I mean, this is pretty impressive. Cale, I want to go ahead and get your take on this.
So after getting swept by the Reds, which we all know as a common consensus was an absolute joke, I still hate it. I still don't want to admit it, but it's just baseball, and that's how baseball's played. Real quick, before we start on this weekend, the standings as of yesterday at 4 p.m., the Brewers still in first in the NL Central at 48 and 35. The Cubs are 47 and 35. They're a half game back. St. Louis kind of slipped a little bit out of well, they're still in contention, but they're kind of falling down. They're 42 and 40. They're 5.5 back from first. Pittsburgh 39 and 43. They're 8.5 back, and Cincinnati, who's playing very good baseball right now, and I don't know what it is. That sweep with the Cubs.
They've only lost 1 game in the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, and it's whatever. Just keep beating them NL Central teams. As long as it's not us on a 4-game sweep again, I'm cool with it. But they're 36 and 48. They're 12.5 out of first place. Tyson, I'll start with you. This weekend, the Cubs had a heck of a weekend against the Twins. Now, we did have some perfect conditions for hitting the ball. That's why you saw all of these runs and home runs being hit. It was hot, humid, wind was blowing out the dead center, out towards the scoreboard. So it was a hitter's weekend. But with that being said, with the heat, it was not a pitcher's weekend because you don't want to go out there and throw more than 25 pitches an inning as a pitcher. 107 heat index. So, that being said, how do you think the Cubs, in your eyes, played this weekend?
Well, and you touched on it. Absolutely beautiful weather. It was outstanding outside. That's how we put up all them 35 runs. In our last 4 games, we've put up 11, 10, 14, and 11 runs. So even when we were out in L.A., it wasn't as great as it was up in Chicago the last couple days. But we still had a good day then, so I don't think the weather has everything to do with it. But the Cubs have been playing absolutely phenomenal. It's the first time since 1930 that the Cubs have put up over 4 games straight with 10-plus runs. So they're we've been talking about it the last couple weeks. We've been waiting for them bats to wake back up. And they're finally starting to hit. They're finally starting to put those runs on the board. But I will tell you one thing that made me nervous. It wasn't a pitcher's weekend, like you said, but we still let up 6, 9, and 10 runs in those 3 games this last weekend. That's a lot of runs to be given up. It's hard to expect to win those games if we're giving up those kinds of numbers. It's a good thing the bats did wake up a little bit. Even John Lester hitting that couple-run shot.
3-run shot.
Yeah, to help himself out and win that game 11-10. But the pitching, to me, still making me nervous. Even our relievers coming in, still a little nervous. But pitching's been slightly better, and our batting is finally getting good. Now, last week you did ask if I was worried about the Cardinals, and I told you no. And I think that's the reason why. We finally see it. They're back to 5.5 back, or 5 games back from the Cubs, 5.5 out of first. So, like I said, I wasn't worried about them. They're still within striking distance, but they'll never get that chance to strike, I don't think.
Go ahead.
If the Cubs continue to hit the ball like they did this weekend, real quick, I'm just going to go over some numbers. The Cardinals will not have an opportunity to come back or even contend because after the All-Star break, Jake knows this as a Cubs fan. All of us in here are Cubs fans, minus Gavin being a Blue Jays fan. I'm not really understanding that logic on there. Just had to give you some crap about that. But this weekend, I want to apologize to anybody that's an Addison Russell fan. I kind of knocked him a little bit. I mean, I still feel like he should be a pawn in a trade for Manny Machado.
Well, he shut you up real quick.
But he was only 1 for 4 Friday when he hit that grand slam.
Right.
So that was his only hit.
But it only
on that
took
only
one.
hit, he had 4 RBIs.
Right.
Almora, though, real quick. Jake, I want to get your take on this. Albert Almora, batting .331.
Highest in the NL.
Not in the starting lineup yesterday. He doesn't start. He doesn't get enough starting time, in my opinion, for somebody that's going to bat lead off and hit .331 on the season. What do you got?
I mean, I think that's a product circumstance, too, of being that he doesn't start, is it's a small sample size compared to other center fielders. I love that he qualifies now, so we can all show him that he's the leader in batting average in the NL. And I love Albert. Brings great defense, good base running. We've seen it in the past. And I think he deserves to start, but the fact of the matter is this is a very deep outfield. You got Jason Hayward, you got Schwarber, Chris Bryant can play left, all sorts of different combinations. Ian Happ, Zobrist, all these different options where you're like, none of these guys actually have to work harder than they need to, which is kind of makes you wonder, why aren't we going to win? Like, why don't we win more now? We're a good team. We should win more games. But the fact of the matter is, if you can get to the playoffs and then play your best baseball, that's shown by a lot of teams. That's how you win championships, is that you find yourself playing the best baseball at the right time. So I trust Madden. A lot of people are calling for his head. They don't know why he's doing what he's doing, especially with Almora sitting, which, like I said, but guy that brings great defense. And like I said, he finally found his bat. We all wondered through all the minors and when he first got called up if he'd find that bat. And it looks like he's got it to some extent right now. And, I'm just going to continue to trust the process we've got going on.
Tyson, you weren't here for this. I don't know if you got to listen to our episode for Friday, but Tyson brought this up. Albert Almora gives it all every play, whether he's crashing headfirst into the wall out there or sliding in, jumping over the fences, you name it, at the plate, on the bases, out in the field. You can't ask any more from this kid, or guy rather. I just feel like he qualifies for some more playing time. So. Tyson, what do you think?
Well, I just want to piggyback on that. He's one of those guys like the Liddy Gang 19 Illinois football recruits. He's got that spark. He wants to be there and he wants to perform. So I think he gives it all every play. And I love that in the dude, and I think he's absolutely phenomenal, and it's finally starting to show and pay off for him.
Saturday he was 3 for 3 with 2 ribbies. So
that helps. But you got to think. Happ plays a good center field. He doesn't have the glove by any means. I think we can all agree with that. Anybody who's a baseball fan can agree with that. But Happ is a serviceable defender in center, and then he runs the bases well. Fastest player arguably on the Cubs, from what I hear, is the argument.
Yeah.
Runs the bases well, has a good bat, has plus power. And guys like that, Hayward's with his defense, if you're trying to put a Zoe or a Bryant in right or something like that sort of happens, you can't downplay the different options we have, because there's a lot of different ways to win a baseball game. I think we can all agree to that. And does Almora need to play more? Absolutely. But does it need to change the flow? Maybe not. Maybe it's best right now what he's doing, because he's playing well because of it.
Everybody hit well this weekend for Chicago, but like I stated, it was a phenomenal hitters weekend up there. When it gets hot in Chicago, balls are going to fly out.
Absolutely.
Especially when that wind's blowing out the dead center. So let's kind of shy away from the Cubs here a little bit. Let's talk about the Cardinals. Gav, what do you got for the Cardinals on for us this weekend?
Well, the Cardinals struggled a little bit, like you said, touched on earlier, and they I believe they bring it into a game and a half or 2 games behind the Cubs at one point.
Two
games behind the Cubs at one point, but they dropped a couple games to Atlanta, which is great for the Braves because they needed it, because the Phillies are playing great right now. But they dropped a couple to the Braves, and that really helped out the Cubs. They're only half game behind the Brewers. With the Cardinals dropping these 2 games, I believe Tyson touched on it earlier. If you want to go ahead and continue with that. This isn't looking good for them because they've already been struggling.
Well, yeah, I think it'll kind of continue. I think they'll ride that line, that 500 kind of line. Few games over it, maybe they'll drop down and hit it, and maybe they'll jump back up. But
which you've touched on last week.
Yeah,
so.
They're 5 games back again of the Cubs. So, like I said, we weren't really worried about it. I don't see them struggling for too much longer. I think they'll drop some games here and there. They'll drop down towards that 500, which isn't awful. It's not a bad season. But I think they'll end up over 500, but I don't think they'll ever be close to the contention again.
As soon as they get rid of Mike Matheny out of that clubhouse, they'll be back in contention.
Yep.
Do you guys think they make a trade, or do they break down? They start to rebuild? There's a lot of contention on what they should do. I think, it just kind of, some guys look really good. I like Bader personally. I think he's great in the outfield.
We've talked about him some.
Bader and DeYoung, Tommy Pham, he's got to go. He doesn't.
See, I really like Tommy Pham, so I don't know why you're such a hater on him.
Because he was 0 for 27 in his last plate appearances. 0 for 27. I'm gonna throw that past you.
I'm just saying he's another guy brings a spray. You're absolutely right. He's had a bad couple games. 0 for 27. That's not good at all.
A couple games,
but he's another one of those guys, brings a spark, and he's good on the defensive side.
So, real quick, let's talk about this, me and you, because we don't disagree with things that much.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you get rid of, or who would you want to see them get for Tommy Pham? Or use Tommy Pham stay? Personally, I want to see Machado go or come to the St. Louis. They could feel like they could benefit a little more than the Cubs could if Addison could stay hitting the ball. But what do you think about Pham? Like, honestly, what's your big attraction to him?
Well, I don't watch a whole lot of Cardinals games because I really just hate the Cardinals.
I do too, but I'm trying to.
When I do get the updates on my phone,
when
I do get the updates on my phone, Tommy Pham hits a single, scores 2. Tommy Pham or someone hits a run, Pham scores. Pham hits a home run, 3-run home run. I always see his name and stuff. Even if he's not performing well, he's still there. He's still putting up numbers. He's still doing things, even if you don't really even see him. So kind of behind the scenes, he's always just there.
For sure. I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, somebody that you're seeing constantly in your phone updates, whether it be from ESPN, MLB.com, or whoever, I feel like they need to stay consistent. Somebody that goes 0 for 27. Now, keep in mind,
he's young.
Anthony Rizzo was 0 for 23, or 2 for 23, up until that Dodgers series. But somebody that's 0 for 27 with his potential, I don't get it. And it's not the first time he's been in one of these slumps like that.
Now, I really do like him, like I said, but I'm not saying they shouldn't get rid of him because I honestly think he's a good player, and I think they can get something out of him. So I would like to see him stay because I think he's got potential to put on with him, but they can get something out of him. So a trade might not be a bad thing.
Is middle ground maybe he's not worth moving just to move? You really want to upgrade, but definitely not worth moving just to move.
If you can upgrade, definitely go for it. But if you're getting another run-of-the-mill guy that you think might just replace, it's not worth it. That's probably a little middle ground we could settle on.
Real quick, I want to give a shout-out to 2 guys here. Javi Baez got National League Player of the Week for the Cubs, and then also John Lester. Not only congratulations on his second career home run in that series against the Twins, but he also got National League Pitcher of the Month. Not the week, the month. So it's a very impressive award for him.
Well deserved for both of them.